As any NBA fan knows, the best way to describe the career of Wilt Chamberlain is mythological. Bodybuilder strength, NFL running back speed, and Michael Jordan-esque leaping ability are only a few ways to describe the man, if we're going off rumors and stories. Today I'll be trying to separate the truths from the lies, or the myths from the man. This video will be divided into three sections: speed, strength, and vertical. To start off the speed section, I'll be going over the legendary story of Wilt and NFL legend Jim Brown getting into a foot race. As the legend goes, the two men were at a party when an argument began about who was faster. Of course, the two men decided a race was the best way to settle the dispute. According to the story, Wilt Chamberlain beat Jim not once, but twice. To compare, we have a 6'2", 230-pound NFL fullback versus a 7'1", 275-pound NBA center. After some research, I could not verify this claim and I couldn't find where the story originates from, so I'll have to put this under the myth column. But this story might not be that ridiculous when I tell you more about Wilt's speed. For example, Wilt was a certified collegiate track star. For his speed accomplishments, Wilt ran a sub-11 100-yard dash, a 49-second in the 440-yard race, and under 2 minutes in the 880-yard race. Through some further research, I figured out that these numbers were more or less given out by Wilt Chamberlain himself and also have no verifiable proof behind them. So we're going to have to chalk these numbers up under the myth category. Another example of Wilt's speed comes straight from the legendary ABA and NBA coach Alex Hannum during his time coaching for the San Francisco Warriors. Now, Coach Hannum had set up a team race, and by the end, the race had been narrowed down to two guys: 6', 175-pound Al Attles and 7'1", 275-pound Wilt Chamberlain. Do you want to take a guess who won? Yes, the Goliath himself, Wilt Chamberlain. To me, this account seems perfectly reasonable and reliable, so I'll consider this a truth. All in all, Wilt Chamberlain was an undeniably fast player with speed that's impressive for a guy of any size, let alone an NBA center. Strength. There are a lot of myths surrounding the strength of Wilt Chamberlain. I've heard rumors that he could bench up to 600 pounds, which is a claim that I can't validate. There's also a story from Arnold Schwarzenegger that says Wilt benched 500 pounds, which is something you can choose to believe if you want. However, I want to go over a more reasonable story about Wilt's strength that comes straight from the late Paul Silas. This story takes place during a game when Wilt was with the Lakers and Paul Silas was with the Celtics. Paul Silas and Laker Happy Hairston were on the verge of fighting. Now, Wilt, being the peaceful man he was, he couldn't stand to see this fight break out, so he walks over to the 6'7", 235-pound Paul Silas and casually picks him up, turns him around, and tells him, "We're not going to have that stuff." And Paul Silas did what any sane man would do and replied, "Yes, sir." Think about that for a second. Wilt had the ability to pick up someone the size of an average NBA small forward and turn him around. Now, I consider this story to be a pretty reliable source, as it's hard to imagine Paul would make up a story about being tossed around like a small child. Another story I consider reliable for pretty much the same reason comes from NBA All-Star and coach Red Kerr. Kerr stated that a frustrated Wilt dunked the ball on Red so hard that it went through the basket and broke his toe. ABA MVP and NBA All-Star Billy Cunningham also collaborated this story and added that Red was so embarrassed by this that he faked a trip and acted as if that's what hurt his toe. Vertical. Now, the biggest myth surrounding Wilt's vertical is that it reached anywhere from 46 to 48 inches. Even Wilt himself said his prime vertical was around 48 inches, but Wilt was known to say some pretty outlandish things about himself. Wilt also claimed that he could dunk on a 12-foot basketball goal, but that it was an effort to do so, which is much more believable, as with Wilt's 9'6" standing reach, he would only need a vertical a little north of 30 inches to do so. However, Wilt also stated that he could snatch change off the top of a backboard, a feat that would put him north of a 40-inch vertical. This claim holds a little more weight, as it's been backed up by former 76ers announcer Sonny Hill. Lastly, there was an article in Look magazine from 1958 that credited Wilt with a height of 13'3" after jumping, which would put his vertical around 45 inches. But nothing from the article tells us about the testing of this, nor does the article give us any real validity for this claim. The only 100% solid evidence of Wilt's vertical is clips showing Wilt's head reaching the rim, which would put his vertical at about 35 inches. Now, it isn't fair to say that 35 inches is his max vertical, as a player's highest jump would never happen in a game, as it is in a very controlled environment. I think it's fair to say that Wilt's vertical probably reached around 38 inches and maybe up to 40, which is still insanely impressive in general, and especially for someone of his size, but the claims reaching up to 48 inches are rooted completely in hearsay and therefore cannot be considered fact. And for a final note here, I want to say that I think a lot of these myths surrounding Wilt Chamberlain often tarnish his career more than help it, because a lot of people learn that they're over exaggerated and think everything about him is over exaggerated. At the end of the day, he's still one of the best players of all time. I have him in my top 10, and this video can definitely help with maybe separating the myth, but still showing that a lot of him was impressive.